venture capitalists themselves are also entrepreneurs. They want to make a good investment and they want to give returns to their investors is because if they don't do it, they will have to close their venture fund. If you want somebody that is not in a hurry to sell your company and to return money to the investor, talk to angels or get a grant. Do not talk to venture capitalists. Look for another funding, maybe your savings, your friends and family, and then you can stay forever in the company.
Before she stepped into classroom, she advised global corporations, worked in investment banking, and sat inside venture and private equity funds, deciding where capital actually flows. Today, she helps shape the people who go on to raise it. Welcome to another episode of School to Startup, brought to you by Tracxn, a private market intelligence platform that's been supporting the global university ecosystem for over 12 years. To our university partnerships, we work with institutions driving innovation and entrepreneurship, and this series highlights the academic leaders making that happen. I'm Harish, your host today, and joining us is Luisa, Associate Professor of Management Practice in Strategy and Entrepreneurship, and also Academic Director of Institute of Entrepreneurship and Private Equity at London Business School. Luisa, it's great to have you with us.
Hello. I'm delighted to be here, part of this series of speakers. So thank you for inviting me.
Great. So to start with, you have worked in venture capital, private equity, investment banking, and now you teach school kids. So I have to ask you, who is more difficult, students pitching ideas or founders pitching investors?
Um, I think everyone has their difficulties. So I would say that when I was in business in the real business world, let's say in investment banking or as you mentioned in venture capital or private equity, you are negotiating with companies with real world money and startups, and so that of course has some challenges. But when you are with kids or with university students or executives, because now I have a London Business School is mainly graduates and executive, there are always challenges. But for me, it's also the impact that we can have in them that excite me. So I think it's different, but exciting in both cases.
Very interesting. You have also spent time thinking about entrepreneurship, not just at the university level, but at a country level, right? So some years ago, you were exploring how to grow entrepreneurship across an entire ecosystem, even starting from school-age children. So what did you learn from that experience?
Yeah. Oh, that was very interesting process. It was in the aftermath of the financial crisis, and many countries there were a lot of young people unemployed. In fact, in my own country, which is Spain, over 50% of the young people were unemployed, and so there was an initiative that was how can we help these young people to get a job. And actually, the idea was they are not going to get a job unless they create their own jobs. And so we did a research to understand the barriers to entrepreneurship and also to look at best practices around the world. What did we learn after looking at, examples, PhD dissertations, books? What did we learn? We learned that there were some barriers. There were, I would say, three, actually four main barriers. The first barrier was administrative barriers. So if it's very difficult to start a business, if you have to go to many offices, get stamps, that's a problem. But we also discovered that if you are very entrepreneurial, you don't care. You will do it. You will go to all these offices. Then the second barrier that we found was money, funding. But we also saw that in those ecosystems where there is a lot of entrepreneurs, the money comes, money arrives. So money is not an issue if you have entrepreneurs. Then the third thing that we saw was the culture of the country. Whether in the country, being an entrepreneur is good or bad. And we did a lot of surveys and we observed that in some countries, mainly continental Europe and in other parts of the world, being an entrepreneur is not seen as something good. Like your parents prefer you to work in a famous company or, to be a lawyer or a medical doctor. They don't like you to be an entrepreneur. Other parts of the world, let's go to the United States, being an entrepreneur is seen like something very good. So the culture was one issue. And then the other issue was education. People didn't know how to start businesses. So what we decided basically was that we have to change the culture of the country through education. And this is where we started working with the schools, to your question, because we saw that all the children have the characteristics of entrepreneurs. How do we define an entrepreneur? An entrepreneur is a person that takes risks, have a lot of creativity, is not scared of failure, is taking action, doing things. If you look at the children, they are all like that. But something happens in the school that we stop being entrepreneurs. And so we develop a program to help teachers in the schools to continue nourishing that entrepreneurial spirit in children through all their normal classes, but helping them to take more risks, to be more creative, to do things that are entrepreneurial, and then also how to evaluate, depending on the age, that they were reaching these skills they were developing, and so on. And it was a program by basically for teaching the teachers, and then this is being now implemented for 20 years. We hope to see the effects in the future. Actually, not 20 years, sorry, 10 years. We will need at least 20 years to see some effects. So that was, maybe I talked too much, but it was a very exciting project.
Amazing. Before we deep dive, this is for our viewers. If you're enjoying conversation like this with global academic leaders who are shaping the entrepreneurship, please like, comment, subscribe to the Tracxn channel, and click the bell icon so you don't miss upcoming episodes. Right. So back to the insights. In your book, Entrepreneurial Finance, The Art and Science of Growing Ventures, you describe finance as both analytical and deeply human. Why do founders often treat finance like it's just a math, when in reality it's a negotiation or a psychology?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thank you for that. So there is, of course, the theory and the models, and you can study that. But as you just say, in the world of entrepreneurial finance, when we are talking about companies with no history that are entering in new markets where there is no market, the model, the financial model, the traditional corporate finance, you cannot apply because you don't have that history, like all those accounting information and data points that you need to do a forecast. And so then there is all this part of the art of how do you approach early stage investors like venture capitalists, angels, or even how do you convince somebody to believe in your vision and to follow kind of your dream, but putting money on the table. So there is a lot about, learning what's happening in places and chemistry. And investors always say that they are betting on the founders more than, on the business plan or the pitch deck. There has to be something there attractive, a big problem, but it's a lot about the art. And of course, there is the science. So this is why in the book we try to bring, what we know from finance, but also the learnings from the practice, and have a lot of, pedagogical features in the book, like protagonists giving examples, telling stories, and case studies to practice with real cases.
Very interesting. You've also spent years studying how entrepreneurship is taught, right? So, if you could redesign entrepreneurship education from scratch today, what would you remove immediately?
So it depends to who. Again, if you are talking children, if you are talking high school more, if you are talking university, for me, actually, the best will be that at the university level, we do not need to teach anybody entrepreneurship because you learn it before. That will be the ideal thing. The ideal thing for me will be that my kind of entrepreneurship job in that sense, not the entrepreneurial finance that has also some techniques, but the basic entrepreneurship you don't need anymore. How do you teach it in the schools? How do you teach it when somebody is 14, 15, 16? Well, you teach it by doing things, right? It's not about, okay, then you have to write this, you have to do this. No, it's, okay, let's practice. And practice can be an initiative, a project. For example, you want to go, the class want to go 1 week on holidays. Okay, fundraise money for that with an initiative. It could be some social project. It can be some, selling something in the school. It can be very basic things, but you have to create your marketing campaign, you have to do a price, you have to understand the needs of the customer. So all these things you need to practice. You cannot just, and it can be in any class. For example, mathematics, right? We all study a lot of mathematics when we are kids, but do we need to learn if a train is leaving from station A and going to station B, and there's another train going from station B to A, where do they meet? Can we do something more accounting? Somebody is selling these, and these are the raw materials, and there are 3 employees. How much money can they spend in marketing, or how much money will they make as a profit, if any? So these type of things is just the things that we are learning, but making it more entrepreneurial. That will be my recommendation. And of course, you cannot just learn by saying, okay, you have to do A, B, C, D. No, go and do it. That's the most important.
Very interesting. You have also sat on investment committees and worked closely with angel networks. So, what is the biggest misconception students or early founders have about venture capital? Is it more glamorous on the outside than it really is?
Actually, I think the biggest one, which I explain to my students that want to raise capital um, on the first day of class, is that venture capitalists themselves are also entrepreneurs because they their business is a venture capital fund, but actually venture capitalists, they have to raise money as well, like any other funder. So they have to go to the limited partners. They have to convince these wealthy individuals, these, asset managers, pension funds, sovereign funds to give them money or commit capital for their fund. And then they have to find an opportunity, which is to invest in this sector, in this country, but they have to look at the competitors. They have to have access to deal flow. So they're actual entrepreneurs. And when they want to make a good investment and they want to give returns to their investors, is because if they don't do it, they will have to close their venture fund. I don't know what, founders or people that are thinking to talk to venture capitalists in the venture capitalists, but venture capitalists are business. And if they are not good in their business, which means giving profits back to the investor, they will close. They don't do it. That I always tell to my students, if you want somebody that is not in a hurry to sell your company and to return money to the investor, maybe talk to angels or get a grant. You get a grant, you just get the money, you don't have. And if you don't want to sell your company at any moment in time, I always tell them, because some people don't realize that there has to be an exit. Then if you want to have a family business, that's great. Do not talk to venture capitalists. Look for another funding, maybe your savings, your friends and family, and then you can stay forever in the company. So yeah.
Very interesting. Your research also explores systematic barriers in entrepreneurship, right? So, from your perspective, what's the most significant structural challenge still limiting capital access for founders?
I think now maybe I'm gonna move to a specific part on this question, because I think everybody talks about barriers for funding and so on, but I'm now doing research on university spin-offs or spin-outs. So academic entrepreneurship or scientific entrepreneurship. I'm very interested in that because something we see in Europe is that we do a lot of research in the universities, top level research. We have many famous universities in Europe, very well known in science, in technology, in life science, in you name it. But then we don't have so many startups. And again, I'm going to use the case of the US. They also have very good universities. They have a lot of startups coming from the university. So what's wrong in Europe? So I'm looking at that, and there is a lot of research already on that. And one of the main limiting factors is that universities make it very difficult for these scientific entrepreneurs or academics that want to start a company using their technologies, the technologies they develop in the university, because the university wants to basically take too much of the company. And this is something that I'm telling to the universities, not to the founders, because in fact, it's the university because they are super greedy and they want to get 50%, then venture capitalists or angels or other investors are never going to invest in this company. And maybe I don't know if in your database you have this type of information about university spinouts, because it's super interesting to see that the universities, the best universities to get more spinouts are the ones that are taking less of the company, of these university spinouts. And if these companies grow a lot, even if you have very little, that's a lot of money. But if you take a lot of something that is not going anywhere because nobody's going to give them any money, then you have 50% of nothing. So well done. So this is one of the barriers. I think universities should be more flexible and understand that less is more.
Amazing. Talking about the universities itself, what separates a university that talks about innovation from one that consistently produces, fundable startups?
Well, in Europe, or where do you mean? In general?
In general.
Yeah, I mean, there are very good universities. Well, in the US, of course, we have Stanford and MIT, I would say. But there might be very good universities also in India that I'm not aware, in China as well. I mean, there's a lot of research. I don't have the data of how much they produce. I'm sure in these parts of the world, this is happening. In Europe, we have very good universities. We have Oxford, we have Cambridge, we have Imperial, we have Technical University of Munich, TUM. We have very good universities across the board, but still the numbers of university spin-outs are very small. They are very good at the research of innovation, but the commercialization part is still a challenge. And now I'm also looking at the Middle East. I'm very interested in what's happening because it's a very young, emerging venture area region, if you will wish, and even Africa as well. And there I was visiting the UAE, and I could actually talk to people from universities and research centers, and they are betting into not only the innovation but also the commercialization part. So we'll see, I think, more happening also in other parts of the world.
Interesting. So finally, for students navigating this uncertainty and also shifting markets, funding cycles, global competition, what mindset should they anchor themselves today?
I think the mindset is always very similar for good entrepreneurs. Good entrepreneurs look for big problems. I think we have a lot of problems today. So the entrepreneurs, they look at the problems as opportunities. So that's the first mindset, is saying, not to complain, but to say, wow, this is wrong, this is not working. Wow, how can I solve it? Okay, so that's the first mindset. So opportunities that come from big problems. The second mindset, I would say, is to try to, even if you don't have experience, even if you are young and you don't know much about that sector, try to talk to people and ask questions and go to potential customers, people that have that problem. So that's the other one, is curiosity. Talk to people. Sometimes we find, and I'm sure you have met some of these people, that they have an idea and they say, I have a great idea, but I cannot tell you because you copy. Okay, first thing, this is not the mindset. First thing, ideas are worth nothing. is the implementation of those ideas that is worth something. Second, if somebody can copy, like if I can copy you just by hearing your idea, I'm sure it's, you're going to have a lot of competitors in 1 minute. So I think curiosity, so talking to people, and then also, not like being willing to take risk, but also to evaluate the risk, because it's not just, being crazy and just, it's like validate a little bit, have some hypotheses, make some assumptions and validate them. And the final, I will say, which is something that we see shifting, and there is research on this, is that good entrepreneurs, they value the money. Good entrepreneurs, when they have funding from investors, they think about the different options and then they go for those options that will create more value. We see that in times when there is too much money in the market, some entrepreneurs, they just waste the money from entrepreneurs because they feel it's so easy to get. And they just, and this is something that we discuss a lot for example, in the book and the entrepreneurial finance book that you mentioned before, because it's okay. It might sound like very stupid that you do a financial plan if everything is kind of like unknown, but at least you have a plan and you know how much is the price and how much are your costs. And you know how much are your unit economics. You need to understand that you cannot just go and throw money. So I think this financial mentality and valuing every dollar, every pound, every whatever unit of of the currency you are is super important. And we see those entrepreneurs, stronger entrepreneurs in times of crisis because they really, really value the money. And in terms of everybody gets funding, it's the opposite. So I would say those are the entrepreneurial mindset characteristics of good entrepreneurs.
Amazing. Louisa, this has been such an insightful conversation. Today, we explored how entrepreneurial finance is as much about psychology as it is about numbers, and how universities can better prepare founders, not just to build the companies, but to raise capital intelligently and responsibly. Thank you very much, Louisa, for being part of this School to Startup episode, and for sharing all your insights.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Great. And for those who are watching and who want to go deeper, you can find her book, Entrepreneurial Finance, The Art and Science of Growing Ventures, on Amazon and major bookstores worldwide. The link will be available in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, subscribe to the Tracxn channel, and click the bell icon button so you never miss the conversation shaping the future of entrepreneurship. We'll see you in the next episode.